You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
Hi, I'm Jay Farner, CEO of Quicken Loans, America's largest mortgage lender. Spring will be here soon, so if buying a new home is on your to-do list, right now is the time to call Quicken Loans. Learn about which mortgage options make sense for you and get a jump on your competition. With our exclusive Rate Shield approval, the low rate you lock today is protected for up to 90 days while you shop for your new home. With a Rate Shield approval, if rates go up, your low rate stays locked. But if rates go down, you get that new, even lower rate. Either way, you win. Talk to us today at 800-QUICKEN or go to rocketmortgage.com to take advantage. Here's another great reason to work with us. For a record 9 years in a row, J.D. Power has ranked Quicken Loans highest in the nation in customer satisfaction for primary mortgage origination. Again, to lock in today's low mortgage interest rate and get the security of our exclusive Rate Shield approval, call us today at 800-QUICKEN or go to rocketmortgage.com.
For J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com. Rate Shield approval only valid on certain 30-year fixed-rate loans. Call for cost information and conditions. Equal housing lender. License in all 50 states. NMLS number 3030.
Hi, welcome to the Subway ad for the new Sesame Ginger Glazed Chicken Signature Wrap. How would you like it?
I'll take a...
Sports announcer at home?
Yeah, how'd you...
We just know.
My wife picks up the new Signature Wrap. It's got double the rotisserie-style chicken mixed with a sesame ginger glaze. She appears annoyed at me, but she shrugs it off. Those sweet and savory flavors are calling her name. She lifts the wrap and... she takes the bite! Incredible! And now she's closing the door on my... Subway, make it what you want.
Limited time only at participating restaurants. Double meat based on average 6-inch sub.
I'm little teapot, short and stout.
Here is my handle and here is my spout.
No, Dad, like this. When I get all steamed up, then I shout, tip me over and pour me out.
This is WWE superstar Roman Reigns. It only takes a moment to make a moment. Take time to be a dad today.
Visit fatherhood.gov, brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
It's time now for the Conservative Curmudgeon Radio Show. Now, here's Grouchy.
I don't know what's going on. Welcome back. It's good to be with you again. Sorry I had to miss last week, but there were circumstances that were not beyond my control, but still had to be dealt with. Anyway, it's
translation going to see Endgame meant more than your fans. No, I'm just playing. I did finally get to see it though. It was pretty cool.
It was pretty cool. Not the end game I had hoped for, but it still was not bad. If you haven't seen it, go see it. No spoilers here, but the payoffs are worth it, I think. I mean, you know, some people don't agree with me, but they are entitled to be enthusiastic in their wrongness. How about that? And that's, you know, that's where I was last week. And I got home in time. I could have done the show, but I just didn't think that I would make it back in time, so I called it beforehand just in case. The last thing I would want to do is have Rick standing by waiting for me and then me not making it. So I did the polite thing. Anyway. And I'm entitled to a night off here and there anyway, aren't I, Rick?
What is this thing you call a night off?
Yeah, well, I know you're in a different boat. You know, you do nightly shows. I'm just a once a weeker. That translates to ham and egger for someone like you. But because you're the steak and potatoes. I'm the ham and egg. Anyway, look, here's what it boils down to. You're sitting here on KLRN radio with me. It's Wednesday night. It's 8:00 Eastern, 7:00 in God's time zone. And the rest of you know where you are. I mean, I don't even try to keep up once you get past the Mississippi River, so it just doesn't matter. But anyway, look, you got me, and after me, you get FUBAR with Politibunny and Orty Packard. I'm sure they've got a fun night planned. They always do. After that, Robinson and Wright. You're going to cut loose with Dan and Rick. And then, God willing, there'll be some America Off the Rails. And, that's your Wednesday night, because it doesn't get any better than that. And I know Wednesday TV sucks. So do yourself a favor and just stay here and camp out with us for a while. Hell, you might even learn something. One of the things we're going to learn tonight, and some of you may have heard it over the weekend, or you may have heard it over the last couple of days, but it hasn't really made big news like I thought it would. So I thought I'd go ahead and bring it up. And we're gonna talk about Joe Biden having his first quote unquote rally over the weekend to launch his, he had his campaign launch, but then he had his first rally over the weekend. And what did he say at the rally? What's his major plan? Go ahead, Rick. Hit the audio button. Let's hear what Joe's major plan is.
People say, well, Joe, how are you going to do all this? Well, guess what? First thing I do is going to repeal this Trump tax cut. Oh, not a joke.
Yeah, not a joke. Not a joke. Joe Biden's plan to get elected is to tell you he's going to tax you more. That's brilliant. So, I mean, look, but here's the thing. Biden has long attacked the president's tax cuts in misleading ways. And, look, there are things that Trump has said that let's just go ahead and say it. They're not true. There's things he said that are not true. Okay. Now, there are things that he said we could say that he took creative license with and reached a little further than the words actually stated of other people. But let's not split hairs. Okay. If you want examples, you can contact me directly on Twitter. You know how to do that. It's at @TCC_Grouchy. I'll be happy to have this discussion with you. I'm not planning to go into depth about what Trump has said that's not true right here on the air, though. Look, I support our president. I want our president to do good. And by most marks, he is. He absolutely is. This is a piece more about Biden. So Biden has long attacked the president's tax cuts in a lot of misleading ways. And the former vice president has never been known for turning a phrase with precision. But in his opening campaign speech, he told a whopper. Okay? So first of all, let's look at a fact here. Technically, the tax cut signed into law by President Trump had an estimated revenue loss of a little under $1.5 trillion over 10 years. So Biden is rounding up here, though one could get the figure up to $2 trillion if you include the cost of additional interest on the national debt or the cost of extending tax cuts that expire. A little more. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But the biggest problem is Biden's sweeping declaration that, quote, all of it went to folks at the top and corporations that pay no taxes. Now, only an idiot would stand and cheer for this, knowing that their take-home pay had increased due to the tax cuts. Only an idiot. Well, okay, sycophants too. But, you know, Biden at his rally, he had, what, maybe a couple hundred people? Maybe. They tried to look and sound enthusiastic, but there was a reason you never saw a big picture of the whole place, because it looked like a boardroom with like 3 rows of bleachers, and that was about it. It was kind of like, when Jeb went to Pensacola, Florida, campaigning, and he had the little standing. He didn't rent the Civic Center in Pensacola. He rented like a private what's the word? A luxury suite. That's all he had, was like a luxury suite. There was like 60 people in it. Yeah. No, Trump had to rent the whole Civic Center, and he put like 9,000 people in there, and Jeb put like 60 into a private room. But anyway, so Biden is telling everybody that it was a $2 trillion loss, which is not true. But the biggest problem is, like I said, he says that all this money went to people at the top and to corporations that pay no taxes. And look, if you've read anything about how this has shaken out, any broad-based tax cut is going to mostly benefit the wealthy because they already pay a large share of income taxes. According to Treasury Department data, the top 20% of income earners paid 95.2% of individual income taxes in 2017. The top 10% paid 81%, and the top 0.1% paid an astonishing 24.1% of all personal income taxes. Now, because there are far more people in the middle class, there are fewer dollars to share per taxpayer when the savings from a tax cut are divvied up. The Nonpartisan Joint Committee of Taxation estimates that 572,000 taxpayers will file returns with an income category of more than $1 million, compared to more than 27 million in the 50,000 to 75,000 category, and about 70 million in the under 50,000 category. Seems like we're missing a category or two there, but anyway, that's okay, because I'm definitely not in the $1 million category, but I am not in either of the other two either. So anyway, if the wealthy end up with more money because they pay more in taxes, that's not necessarily a fair way to look at tax legislation. The top 1% in 2014 earned 20% of adjusted gross income and paid nearly 40% of federal taxes. This is per the Tax Foundation. The Tax Policy Center estimates that in 2018, the top 1% would get 20% of the tax cuts. Moreover, when both the Joint Tax Committee and the Tax Policy Center looked at the impact of the tax bill, they said that in 2018, most people would see an overall reduction in taxes. Now, the Tax Policy Center found that 80+% of all taxpayers would have a tax cut, compared with about 5% experiencing a tax increase. In the middle quintile, 91% would get a tax cut, averaging about $1,090 a year, with 7.3% facing a tax increase, averaging about $900 a year. And there are variables as to why that happens, so if you fall into which category. In terms of just individual tax cuts, we should consider, given that Biden was addressing union workers and other campaign supporters, the Tax Policy Center found 65% of taxpayers would get tax cuts. In the $50,000 to $75,000 range, 82% would get tax cuts, with people who got a tax cut ending up on average around $1,000. So about 80% making more than $1 million would receive an average $75,000 tax cut. This is per the Tax Policy Center. But as we noted, they already pay a lot in taxes, and 20% of that group ended up with an average tax hike of almost $100,000. So there are other ways one can measure the impact of the tax law. The Cato Institute has argued that both the Joint Tax Committee and the Tax Policy Center present a misleading picture because they include payroll taxes, such as for Social Security and Medicare, and the Trump tax cut legislation left payroll taxes untouched. When you exclude payroll taxes, it appears as though the largest share of tax changes goes to the middle income quintile. So the left-leaning institution of taxation and economic policy acknowledges that most people would get a tax cut, but says the tax changes as a share of pre-tax income are larger for the wealthy. So the average pre-tax share is estimated to be 2.1% for all taxpayers in 2018, but the richest 1% would get 2.6%, and the middle quintile would receive 1.6%. Meanwhile, this year's tax season ended. H&R Block reported that its clients experienced a 25% reduction in tax liability, which translates to about $1,200 on average. Tax refunds were mostly flat. However, as the IRS changed the withholding tables so people would see more in their paychecks, so that worked out to about $25 extra every week, or $3.50 a day. You see, there's a difference. You're actually taking more money home. Now, this may be one reason Biden's audience readily agreed with his statement that they didn't feel the tax cut, which is crap on a stick. I mean, it really is. Look, I don't make a ton of money, and my household doesn't make a ton of money, but we experienced about 210, 225, somewhere in that neighborhood, more every month. And that's real money. I mean, that you know, you can call it what you want. You can call it chump change. To some people, that chump change would pay their power bill and part of their grocery bill every month. So, I mean, I'm definitely grateful, and I absolutely love taking home more of my money. Now, first of all, there's no reason that any of us, I don't care how much you make, should be giving even 25% of your money to the government. I think 25% should be the absolute highest end tax bracket. And the government can go to hell and learn how to actually work within a budget. So the size of a tax refund appears to be very important for many Americans, even if it's in effect an interest-free loan to the government. This is what most people don't get. My tax refund is smaller. Well, adjust your withholdings so that you keep your money instead of the government. I would rather write them a check at the end of the year, which I did this year. I've got it pegged out now to where I send them about $500 at the end of the year. I'm happy with that. I can live with that because I get the money during the year. They're not keeping my money and making interest on it to turn around and give me back part of my money with no interest. Use your heads, people. But nevertheless, the average reduction in tax liability was 25%, which also serves to illustrate that many Americans do not pay much in federal income taxes. But when the Biden campaign was queried, there was a series of links to articles that discussed how by 2027, middle-class taxes would rise under the tax law. Well, that's because the individual tax cuts expire over the course of the decade. Republicans structured the tax cut this way to keep the whole package, especially the corporate tax cut, in a budget box that allowed for only a $1.5 trillion increase in federal deficit over 10 years. The assumption, and possibly a big one, is that Congress will vote to extend the tax cuts when they begin to expire. They don't do this very often, but this is a bad plan. Just as most of the George W. Bush tax cuts were extended with the eventual support of Democrats who had long opposed the Bush-era cuts, still, the law is the law, and it's certainly fair to cite the projected impact of the tax cut in 2027, the end of the 10-year budget window. Okay, so it's fair, but here's the deal, folks. If it's fair to point it out, isn't it also fair to point out that they can do this only because they were taking too much to begin with? Why shouldn't these tax cuts be permanent? And while we're on that, where's the second round of tax cuts that Trump was talking about? Why hasn't the House of Representatives moved on that? Yeah, I'll tell you why. Because they're too busy trying to get his tax returns and too busy. Well, never mind. I'll tease the Barr stuff later. We got Barr coming up. Don't worry. But yeah, we're too busy doing all the crap that they've got going on, the circus that's happening right now in the House, and they're ignoring the people. And that's exactly what's going on. They say, oh, we're doing the work of the people. The people have the right to know all this. Okay, that's all fine and dandy, but let's get that other tax package passed. Let's get that second round of tax cuts that's geared specifically to middle-class people. An additional 10% is what Trump was touting back before the election. And, he's got it written, but they're not doing anything with it. So, as Biden told the Teamsters Local 249 in, where was he, Pennsylvania, that Joe Biden is committed to reversing the Republican tax plan because it is overwhelmingly a giveaway to the wealthy and big corporations that hardworking families can't afford. Hardworking families can't afford to have an extra $200 a month in their pocket. No, sir, not according to Joe Biden. 40% of Americans, they say, can't withstand a $400 emergency. And 60% of our largest corporations are paying no taxes at all. Look, Biden talks a good game, but he's as big business friendly as any of these other political whores out there. He says they're fighting to rebuild the middle class and ensure that we reward work, not just wealth. Catchy little phrase, but empty, because he has nothing to back it up with. So that's enough about Biden, really. I mean, I spent far too much time on that anyway. Pressing on. In a couple of weeks, the Democrat hypocrisy on immigration has gone from a steady flow to an overwhelming torrent. I love that word, torrent. Their complete disregard, even for their own policies when it comes to applying them to illegal immigration, is stunning. For no reason other than that, it would require them to stop demagoguing Trump and instead start working with him. Democrats once again show that power Trump's principle with a few recent examples. Consider the response to the humanitarian crisis at the border, one that continues to grow apace, directly propelled by our weak asylum laws and lax border enforcement. Democrats scoff at the claim by the Trump administration and Customs and Border Enforcement about the activities of cartels and human smugglers at the border, despite plenty of evidence to the contrary. A new report from the nonpartisan RAND Corporation found that smugglers and cartels earned as much as $2.3 billion from Central American migrants in 2017. That's smuggling them. Failure to address the crisis at the border is directly lining the pockets of these transnational criminal enterprises. I mean, really, that's what the report calls them: transnational criminal enterprises. We'll just call them cartels. The last finding in the report was key. As Border Patrol resources continue to be diverted away from actually policing the border toward dealing with the massive influx of families and unaccompanied minors, cartels and smugglers are able to engage in cross-border mischief with almost no interference. And members of Congress who take the time to go to the border have seen it firsthand. It's just that the Democrats won't admit it. The human smuggling industry is growing like gangbusters. And the RAND report puts the take for all kinds of smuggling from 200 million to 2.3 billion in 2017. And the stories of sex abuse, particularly of migrant women and girls, are well documented by leading left-wing outlets like the New York Times, Huffington Post, and even Doctors Without Borders. Yet not a peep from the political left, the party that tells us they believe all women, who supports a Me Too movement that, by its own words, was founded to help survivors of sexual violence, particularly Black women and girls and other young women of color from low-wealth communities. In other words, human smuggling, criminal violence, and sex trafficking matter, but only with regard to select victim groups. That would be Democrat voters. Because acknowledging that criminal activity is running rampant at the border means Democrats have to stop protesting Trump and work with him to acknowledge and address the role our lax enforcement and weak asylum laws play in encouraging the victimization of these groups. This really shouldn't be a surprise to anybody, though, given the lip service is a Democratic specialty, or let's say Democrat specialty. Look no further than their response to a suggestion by the Trump administration to release detained immigrants into sanctuary cities, cities who intentionally disregard federal immigration enforcement law. The left howled at Trump's suggestion, calling it manufactured chaos, as well as cynical and cruel. But why? The president's suggestion, which the White House has now disregarded as a policy option, is simply a logical extension of what Democrats have said for years that they want. Over the last 2 years, the party has sought to limit the detention resources available to Immigration and Customs Enforcement and have gone so far as to say the entire agency should be dismantled. Democrats are largely fine with a large number of illegal immigrants simply being able to live freely in the United States without consequence. House Minority Leader, now Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, flatly stated Democrats' view of the law is that if somebody is here without sufficient documentation, that is not a reason for deportation. Former San Antonio mayor and presidential candidate Julian Castro has suggested that illegal border crossings be decriminalized entirely. He said, quote, "The truth is, immigrants seeking refuge in our country shouldn't be a criminal justice issue." Now, his fellow presidential contender, Robert Francis O'Rourke, has openly advocated tearing down existing border walls. That's why liberal cities have fashioned themselves as sanctuary jurisdictions, after all. They see nothing wrong with the act of crossing the border illegally. In fact, illegal immigrants who live in College Park, Maryland and San Francisco can now vote in municipal and school board elections. California's new governor, Gavin Newsom, used his inaugural address in January to propose strengthening the state's sanctuary law by making illegal immigrants eligible for the state's version of Medicaid until the age of 26. Congratulations, California taxpayers. Something else your money will be wasted on. So why then are so many Democrats up in arms over Trump's proposal to simply give them what they say they want? They've intentionally made their cities magnets for illegal immigrants. Why shouldn't they want the responsibility of supporting them? Ironically, in resisting Trump, Cher, of all people, the singer, Cher, the idiot. You've seen her rantings on Twitter. She's mad. The Botox is deep in her brain. Stumbled onto the point and also managed to highlight the hypocritical irony of the entire situation. She said, quote, "I understand helping struggling immigrants, but my city isn't taking care of its own people. What about the 50,000 plus citizens who live on the streets, people who live below poverty line and hungry? If my state can't take care of its own, many of which are vets, how can it take care of more?" That's the whole point. The country cannot encourage and then support the creation of a permanent underclass of illegal immigrants when our resources are already strained to the breaking point. It can't be a shining example of justice while willfully ignoring the black market for human beings created in response to our border policies. If the left is consistent in anything, it is in their loudly telling the rest of us how to live while refusing to acknowledge the consequences of what they espouse or live up to their own principles. And we're at the bottom of the hour, folks. We've got to take a break, but when we come back, I promised porn. We're going to talk porn. So stay tuned. We'll be back in a couple minutes.
Giggity, 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 let's have sex.
Hi, I'm Jay Farner, CEO of Quicken Loans, America's largest mortgage lender. Spring will be here soon, so if buying a new home is on your to-do list, right now is the time to call Quicken Loans. Learn about which mortgage options make sense for you and get a jump on your competition. With our exclusive Rate Shield approval, the low rate you lock today is protected for up to 90 days while you shop for your new home. With a Rate Shield approval, if rates go up, your low rate stays locked. But if rates go down, you get that new, even lower rate. Either way, you win. Talk to us today at 800-QUICKEN or go to rocketmortgage.com to take advantage. Here's another great reason to work with us. For a record 9 years in a row, J.D. Power has ranked Quicken Loans highest in the nation in customer satisfaction for primary mortgage origination. Again, to lock in today's low mortgage interest rate and get the security of our exclusive Rate Shield approval, call us today at 800-QUICKEN or go to rocketmortgage.com.
For JD Power award information, visit jdpower.com. Rate Shield approval only valid on certain 30-year fixed-rate loans. Call for cost information and conditions. Equal housing lender. Licensed in all 50 states. NMLS number 3030.
Hi, welcome to this Subway ad for the new Sesame Ginger Glazed Chicken Signature Wrap. How would you like it?
I'll take a...
Sports announcer at home?
Yeah, how'd you...
We just know.
My wife picks up the new Signature Wrap. It's got double the rotisserie-style chicken mix with a sesame ginger glaze. She appears annoyed at me, but she shrugs it off. Those sweet and savory flavors are calling her name. She lifts the wrap and... she takes the bite! Incredible! And now she's closing the door on my... Subway, make it what you want.
Limited time only at participating restaurants. Double meat basement, average 6-inch sub.
All right, welcome back. If you heard that last commercial before we came in with the intro music, how how can I possibly hold out any longer after hearing a Subway double meat commercial? It is time to deal with porn. It was too good. I couldn't pass it up. I had no idea that commercial would be there. So anyway,
pay no attention to that man behind the curtain.
Yeah, he's an SOB, I'll tell you that. He's a grouchy one. So look, here's the deal. The Arizona State Senate voted on Monday to declare pornography a public health crisis.
Giggity, 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 let's have sex.
Yeah, well, according to Arizona, they're saying let's not. But beyond stating such on their resolution, at least right now, no further action is set to be taken. Now, let's dive a little deeper here, because this is interesting. The bill states that, quote unquote, pornography perpetuates a sexually toxic environment that damages all areas of our society. End quote. Proceeding to list that potential detrimental effects of pornography users include toxic sexual behaviors, emotional, mental, and medical illness, and difficulty forming or maintaining intimate relationships. Due to the advances in technology and the universal availability of the internet, children are being exposed to pornography at an alarming rate. Now, we're going to come back to that, okay? We're going to come back to that. Children are also, leading to low self-esteem, eating disorders, and an increase in problematic sexual activity at ever younger ages, the bill states. The bill first passed the Arizona House of Representatives on February 25th with 32 votes in favor and 28 against. The state Senate vote was held Monday, securing 16 votes in favor with 13 votes against and 1 abstention. Abstinence on a porn vote.
No more Yankee, my Winky.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that made me giggle. Abstaining on a porn vote. So the text of the bill is less than a page and takes no tangible action beyond calling for the members of the state legislature to denounce pornography as a public health crisis. The Arizona Republic reported that Senator Sylvia Allen, a Republican who voted in favor of the resolution, acknowledged that the measure wouldn't take action in terms of outlawing or banning pornography. She said that it will still have an impact because it's the first time we're making a statement about the epidemic of pornography. Epidemic, like measles, like bird flu or swine flu, H1N1, epidemics like that. Look, I don't care whether you're in favor of it. I don't care or if you're not in favor of it. I don't care if you watch it. I don't care if you don't watch it. The fact of the matter is as a discerning, capable adult, you should be able to make that choice for yourself. That's all I'm saying. Minority Whip Senator Jamsita Peshlaki, a Democrat who voted against the resolution, said on the Senate floor that bigger health issues, like the ongoing measles outbreak, are more deserving of attention. I think we need to focus on those type things that are life-threatening and fatal and could spread so quickly to anybody, Peshlaki said. Now, look, I'm not one to often agree with a Democrat on policy issue, but whether that's their whole thing behind it or not, I don't know. That's just what I got in the notes, and I tend to agree with that take. I do. I think there are much more important things that need to be dealt with. Now, let's back up, because I told you we'd touch on this a little more. The children being exposed to pornography. First of all, where do you think this happens? Because I will tell you this. I know a little something about the internet, and I know a little something about where the kids get exposed to pornography, and more often than not, it's at home. Now, there are plenty of cyber tools available to parents free of charge to put on your child's electronic devices that would block such things. But you have to be willing to be a parent instead of their friend and do this. You can't listen to, oh crap, I can't get to that one game that I like because of that software. Tough. Learn to do something else with your phone. Or maybe you don't need a phone. Maybe you don't need an iPad. You know, it's time. What I get sick of, and I work in the tech field. That's all I'll say. I work in the tech field. I get sick of hearing adults talking about how their kids can get to all this stuff, and I start asking simple questions. Oh, what'd you do to block them? What do you mean? I mean, there's free software out there that'll stop that from coming up on their devices. Really? Yeah, really. Well, can you help me? Well, sure. Here's the link. Go download it and put it on their phone or their iPad. So they go and do it, and then like a week later, they're like, "Oh, my kid was raising hell because he couldn't get to this site or that site, and I just took that off." Who you got to blame? Who do you have to blame? I'm telling you, folks, some people need to learn how to parent. Not everybody, but there's some people out there. You cannot be their friend. You have to be their parent. You can be a friendly parent, but you still have to be a parent. It's just how the game's played. You know, when you sit around and think like that as a parent, you're insane. You know, well, I'll just trust my kid. They won't go to. Yes, they will. Yes, they will. And you worry about predators online? That's exactly how predators get in. People having unprotected devices that let kids go online freely, unprotected, and these predators can get to them and start talking to them and start influencing them. And that's when your 12-year-old disappears and she gets picked up 4 states across, 4 states over with some 38-year-old pervert. But enough. I'm off the soapbox. We're going to press on. You want to talk about crazy? I'll tell you something about crazy. Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi's crazy. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi declared
nice girl,
Tuesday,
but about as sharp as a sack of wet mice.
Yes, that is correct. The Tuesday, yesterday, while addressing an audience at Cornell University's Institute of Politics and Global Affairs, she said, "We cannot accept a second term for Donald Trump." She prefaced that by saying, "This will sound political," but then claimed that it's, quote, "just a fact that another term for Trump cannot be accepted." She said, "We have to make sure that the Constitution wins the next presidential election." This is hilarious. It really is. She said, "We can't be worrying about how long is this going to take. Yeah, it will take as long as it does, and we will press the case so that in the court of public opinion, people will know what is right. She's a loon. Just trying to quote her is hard enough. And then she reiterated, we cannot accept a second term for Donald Trump if we are going to be faithful to our democracy. We're not a democracy. And to the Constitution of the United States, and that is just a fact, she said. So we have to operate on many fronts. We have to operate in the Congress, in the courts, and in the court of public opinion, and we must win the next election. These people are so disturbed. Look, you've got committees voting on holding Attorney General Bill Barr in contempt, knowing good and well that what they are doing is trying to compel him to break the law. Okay? The Attorney General cannot give 435 members of the House of Representatives an unredacted copy of the report with grand jury information unredacted, because that information is going to leak out. And if you think it won't leak out, just go back to the Christine Blasey Ford hearing when it was just a Senate panel and information leaked out. It's just not good. You know, they're playing a game with fire here. But the Trump administration has taken executive privilege over the Mueller report and all the related information to it. So let the fight continue. Really, I think this is really more about payback for Eric Holder. I really do. That's all this is. They know that Bill Barr is following the law, but they're going to hold him in contempt for following the law. If he gave them the report, then they could, go after him for that. So, he can't win here. He might as well do what's right by him, which is following the law. That's just how crazy they are. And you want to continue with crazy? Here we go. You want to talk about somebody crazy, but somebody that's getting the attention they're not looking for now? James Comey. James Comey, the world he lives in with the pink sky and the purple clouds, it's getting noticeably warmer. And Attorney General Barr's emissions are the suspected cause. Barr has made plain that he intends to examine carefully how and why Comey, as FBI director, decided that the Bureau should investigate 2 presidential campaigns, and if in doing so, any rules or laws were broken. In light of this, the fired former FBI director apparently has decided that photos of him on Twitter standing amid tall trees in the middle of empty country roads acting all metaphysical is no longer a sufficient strategy. No, Comey's realized, and maybe too late, that he has to try to counter more directly the narrative that's being set by the unsparing Attorney General, whose words in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee landed in the Trump opposition world like holy water on Linda Blair. Shrieking heads haven't stopped spinning since Barr uttered those words. So what we've seen is Comey getting real busy lately. First he penned an op-ed in the New York Times, and then a Times reporter with whom Comey has cooperated in the past wrote a news article exposing an early controversial investigative technique against the Trump campaign in an attempt to get out in front of it and excuse it. Next, Comey is scheduled to be encouraged on a friendly cable news town hall. Bounce back to the op-ed, he trotted out his now familiar St. James shtick, freely pronouncing on the morality of others. He sees himself as kind of a pontiff of the Potomac, if you will, working his beads, but comes out across more like an unraveling Captain Queeg working his ball bearings. Comey adjudged the president as amoral. He declared the attorney general to be formidable but lacking inner strength. The inference is clear. Comey himself, a strategy of insulting the executioner right before he swings his axe is an odd one, but Comey has a long record of odd decisions and questionable judgments. So anyway, amoral leaders, referring to the president, have a way of revealing the character of those around them, wrote Comey, without a hint of irony or self-awareness, apparently. Those whom the former FBI director assembled around him probably rue the day they ever met the guy. Most are now fired or disgraced for appalling behaviors that Comey found easy to manipulate to advance his decisions. Then just to make his op-ed, or make sure his op-ed was odd-salted to the max, Comey mused that the president eats your soul in small bites. Really? I mean, look, Comey appears to be, you know how they talk about how you can cook a frog if you turn the water up just slowly, bit by bit? This is Comey. He apparently doesn't realize that the water's getting hotter. His strange and desperate statements and his behaviors betray his nervousness and apprehension. If you're watching it closely, it's almost uncomfortable, even for people that aren't Comey. He will claim he did everything in the FBI by the book. But after the investigations by DOJ Inspector General Michael Horowitz and U.S. Attorney John Huber, along with Barr's promised examination, once they're all completed, Comey's mishandling of the FBI and legal processes will likely be fully exposed. Ideally, Barr's examination will aggregate information that addresses three primary streams. The first will be whether the investigations into both presidential nominees and the Trump campaign were adequately, in Barr's words, predicated. This means he will examine whether there was sufficient justification under existing guidelines for the FBI to have started an investigation in the first place. The Mueller report's conclusion make this a fair question for the counterintelligence investigation of the Trump campaign. Comey's own pronouncement that the Clinton email case was unprosecutable makes it a fair question for that investigation. So the second stream will be whether Comey's team obeyed long-established investigative guidelines while conducting the investigations, and specifically if there was insufficient truthful justification to lawfully conduct electronic surveillance of an American citizen. FISA court. This all stems back to the Steele dossier. The third stream will be an examination of whether Comey was unduly influenced by political agendas emanating from the previous White House and its Director of National Intelligence, the CIA Director, and Attorney General. This, above all, is what's causing the 360-degree head spins. There are early indicators that troubling behaviors may have occurred in all three scenarios. Barr will want to zero in on the particular areas of concern: the use of the FBI of confidential human sources, whether its own or those offered up by then CIA director. Without going into details, it's important to understand that FBI counterintelligence investigations generally proceed sequentially from what is called a preliminary investigation or inquiry to a full investigation. To move from a preliminary investigation to a full investigation requires substantial information, aka predication, indicating investigative targets acted as agents of a foreign power. This is problematic for Comey in light of Mueller's findings. There are strict guidelines governing when the FBI can task a confidential source or a government undercover operative to collect against a U.S. citizen. Normally, this is restricted to a full investigation and normally restricted to the United States, not overseas. So there you have it, folks. That's where everything's sitting. And, just a programming reminder, I know that that Fu and Orty are getting things fired up over at the FUBAR desk in the studio, getting ready to take charge of the airwaves here. And then after that, you get Robinson and Wright, and then America Off the Rails, right here on KLRN Radio, your home for conservative talk. You're just not going to beat it, folks. Like I said, Wednesday night TV sucks. Do yourself a favor and stay right here. As for me, that's the show for tonight. If you like it, tell your friends. If your friends like it, you need new ones. But they and you are welcome right here with me every week on KLRN Radio for the Conservative Curmudgeon Show. I'm your host, The Grouch. Peace.
Wanna get my body loose, wanna tell you what to do. I've been running out of breath like an animal struggling, looking for a diamond. I'm trying, I'm fighting, riding in the rhythm now.
I hate this place. Nothing works here. The medications don't work. I've been here for 7 years.
Here's to us, here's to love, all the times that we messed up. Here's to you, feel the grass, 'cause the last few nights have kicked my ass. If they can't help, tell them go fuck themselves. Go fuck themselves. Here's to us, here's to us, here's to us, here's to us, here's to love, here's to everybody well. Here's to us, here's to love, here's to us, here's to us.